Good morning, terrible tendies. This is your commish coming at you again with the Week 8 recap. We're going to be starting this off. We're going to head out. I'm going to go pick up some Dunkin' Donuts, get some breakfast coffee here, probably a Dunkaccino per my usual request. And while we do that, let's go ahead and read some recaps here. We're going to take a look at our first matchup, which is going to be Lock, Stock, and Dock versus No Punt Intended. This week, the reigning Chauncey got the win, no punt intended, 109 over Lock, Stock, and Dock's 93.9 points. Now, we're going to start on Lock, Stock, and Dock side of the ball. And with both Adrian Peterson and Todd Gurley on bye week, you knew he was probably going to be having to dig into the old knapsack of usable players to see if anybody there is available to help, and nobody really was. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about one of the few guys who did help out. As usual, Tom Brady is in that list. Don't you pull out in front of me. Yeah. Tom Brady, coming into the week, was number 2 in the NFL in yards per attempt and passer rating. He was the second rated, I believe, next to Carson Wentz. And during that time, he had averaged about 19.5 points every week. So Tom Brady clear as to why the Patriots just got rid of Jimmy Garoppolo this morning, as Tom Brady clearly is not going to be going anywhere despite being 40 years old. But he had a ho-hum week this week. Now, a ho-hum week for Tom Brady, 333 yards and a touchdown. It's his third week in a row scoring 15 points. So not a bad deal there. Alshon Jeffrey, meanwhile, had his best fantasy day since week 2. Only had 2 receptions, but he definitely made the most of those receptions with this 53-yard catch and run for a huge touchdown in that game. 2 receptions, a total of 62 yards, and a touchdown for 16.2 points. So finally, Alshon Jeffrey's showing a little bit of worth there, which is nice to see. Matt Prater, meanwhile, was the top dog for Lock, Stock, and Dock. Crazy how we've just had so many kickers this season. It seems like either the defenses are better, the offenses are just not quite clicking in the red zone like they normally do. Matt Prater definitely showed why he was worth that $11 million extension that he signed earlier this week. I think it takes him out through like 2020. So he's going to be kicking for a while in this league. He had 3 field goals of less than 40 yards, a field goal of 40 to 49 yards, and he had 1 that was over 50 yards. You're probably hopefully watching 1 or more of those. I don't know. Sometimes they show these kicks. Sometimes they don't. But he ended up with 18 points as the top dog for Lock, Stock, and Dock. So let's flip over to the winning side of the ball. No punt intended. Nearly half of no punt intended's points came from 2 players. And we're going to talk about them. But first, let's talk about Justin Tucker, yet another kicker who kicked his way to the 3rd best point total of the day for no punt intended. He had 4 extra points, a field goal of 40 and through 49 yards, and of course, 1 50-yarder. He had 12 points. Now, he could have finished with a shit ton more. He could have hit 20 points this week. He could have hit probably 16, but he did have a blocked field goal. Maybe you saw 1 or more of those. I don't really fucking know. I haven't looked at replays yet. But let's talk about the 2 big top dogs. The first one, always surrounded in a shroud of controversy, of course, is Ezekiel Elliott. He had a couple of firsts this week. He had his first fumble of the season. But then he also had his first 150-yard rushing game. So good on you, Ezekiel Elliott. Good on you. 150 total yards rushing, 2 touchdowns for 26.9 points. But not to be outdone, the other running back in this situation, outperforming for no punt, was LaShawn McCoy, who also had his first 150-yard rushing performance of the season. He finished with 151 yards, rushing touchdown, 6 catches for another 22 yards, 29.3 points. LaShawn McCoy just coming out of his socks right now. Some real quick updated news. Fresh off the News Network, Ezekiel Elliott more than likely will be suspended this next week, and probably will be upheld through at least the next 6 games. So we may not see Ezekiel Elliott for a while. Personally, I am okay with this, as Sunday they play my beloved Kansas City Chiefs in Dallas. They're heading down to Jerry World. So I hope that holds through, because it's going to be about the only chance, because the Chiefs' run defense has just gotten torched this season. It looked okay last night, but again, it's C.J. Anderson. CJ something, I don't know, CJ Spiller? I think the Chiefs have CJ Anderson now. Anyways, didn't look fucking good. So, way to go, no punt intended. 109.2 points to 93.9 points from Lock, Stock, and Doc. Way to go, no punt intended on the win. I'm going to be heading up to... I might be able to get one more recap in. We'll see then.
Good morning. Welcome to the Dunkin' Donuts in Waukee. This is Bruce. How can we help you?
Dunkin' Donuts, you can't find me in a grocery store. Dunkin' Donuts.
Thank you.
It's actually $3.96. Sorry about that.
All right. Thank you.
You have to get it right. Dunkin' Donuts, it's worth the trip.
All right, now the secret to a drinkable Dunkaccino, because I have sensitive teeth. So what I'm doing here is got my little small cup of ice. And I'm just gonna be dropping some of that right into that Dunkaccino. Little spinny, spinny, spin. Best fucking shit in the world, man. I gotta tell you. The other cool part is you always gotta go with the standby, the classic cake chocolate frosted donut. Just amazing. Oh, so good. So fucking good. Oh, I'm gonna go a little sip. Before you swallow, you gotta get a little sip of the Dunkaccino in there. Okay. Oh, perfect match made in heaven right there. Oh, it's so good. All right, well, now that we're done with Dunkachinos, we're going to head on out to Jesus Teats MD's new abode. And so, while we're on the way out there, probably going to be doing a whole bunch more of these recaps. So, we'll see you then. Why don't we go ahead and look at another recap here. Chicago Guns versus Ambitious But Rubbish. Chicago Guns winning this week. Can't even give Ambitious But Rubbish a win on his wedding weekend, but that's okay. 122 points for Chicago Guns, 96.6 points for Ambitious But Rubbish, and that is where we will start this recap. So I think we all know now why Ambitious But Rubbish hasn't had the best season. I want to say maybe game one. This should have been the second game. Well, the reason behind that is simple. He was planning a fucking amazing wedding. For those of you in the league that were able to go, that was just an absolute amazing bash, whatever. It was fucking awesome out at Noche and at the park. So thank you, Ambitious But Rubbish's owner, Andy Poppin, for a wonderful, wonderful evening. It was great catching up with everybody. But let's go ahead and hit that recap. So Andy Dalton started the season with 0 touchdowns and 5 interceptions through his first 2 weeks. 5 interceptions in the first 2 weeks. Since then, in his last 5 games, he has 4 multi-touchdown games over those last 5 tries. And of course, this week was no different. 243 yards, 2 touchdowns for 15 points. So not a bad week out of Andy Dalton there. We also are going to talk about the other quarterback on that team, Big Ben Roethlisberger. Big Ben had only his second 300-yard rushing game or passing game of the season. He's only done that twice. Normally he's just flicking them down the field. But that was definitely helped by this 97-yard catch and run touchdown by Juju Smith-Schuster. I'll have a little thing down here with that name, Juju Smith-Schuster. While you're watching that replay, just a huge, awesome run. He finished the day 317 yards, a touchdown. Did throw an interception because that's what Big Ben does. 16.8 points. By the way, He only has 2 games this season without a turnover. He either fumbles it away or throws a pick pretty much every week. So you're going to have to go in with him knowing there's at least a 2-point handicap. All right, but let's talk about the big game of the week. This game was absolutely huge. Huge. Houston versus Seattle. Holy cow, if you guys didn't get to see that game, I did not because it was not on local television, but it was absolutely monstrous. I think they had something like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 fourth quarter lead changes, just going back and forth. Tons of yards, tons of fantasy points. So we're going to be highlighting a number of different players throughout these recaps. The first of which is Lamar Miller. He had a game, 54 yards and a touchdown rushing the ball, 3 receptions, 19 yards, and another touchdown receiving. Finished with 20.8 points, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, as they would say when we talk about that game. On to the winning side of the ball, though. Let's talk a little Chicago Guns. Jordan Howard has been the definition of a bell cow this season. Since week 2, he has averaged 23 carries per game. So, of course, this week he got 23 carries, had 102 yards for 14.6 points. Hasn't found the end zone all that much, but when you're getting that amount of work, you're going to have a decent experience there with him. Also on the high point, Cowboys defense and special teams had a great game against the Washington Redskins. They only allowed 19 points. They had an interception, 2 fumble recoveries, which I believe one of those was returned for a touchdown, for 25 points. So big game out of the Cowboys. But again, we're jumping back into that Houston-Seattle game here. DeAndre Hopkins, just another gigantic performance from him. This is his 2nd highest yard total of his career was in this game. The highest was in 2014. He had 238 yards versus the Titans. But this week, largely in part to the 72-yard touchdown that you've probably been watching as I've been talking, he had 8 receptions, 224 yards, plus that big touchdown for 35.4 points. So, ginormous game out of Shy Guns there. And what's his nuts that I was just talking about? DeAndre Hopkins. There we go. That's what I was talking about. Sorry. Mental lapse. I need some more coffee. But way to go, Chicago Guns, on getting the win. I'm going to start probably rolling through a couple more recaps here just on my drive out. So we'll see you then.
Turn left onto 240th Street.
Thank you, Siri. I appreciate that. Who's got a fucking boat? Where are you boating at this time of the year? All right, welcome on back. As you can see from the sun change here, maybe you can tell, maybe you can't. I've turned and now going a different direction. God, that sun is bright. Let's go ahead. Ugh. Forehead. 4. As you can see, I had to put the visor up there. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about my matchup. Nuck Nuck Mooske versus 12 Monkeys. This was a pretty close game until Monday night, and then everything just fell to shit for me. As it does since Aaron Rodgers got injured. So I'm sitting right now 66.7 points. Second time in 3 weeks I've scored in the 60s. 12 Monkeys, 91.3, getting the win. Way to go, 12 Monkeys. Go ahead and start with my side of the ball. Only 2 players this week finished in double digits. So let's take a look at them. Derek Carr has been inconsistent to say the least this season, but I will say it's all going to be getting better, I think, the longer we go in. That's why part of the reason why I traded for him. That now was super desperate. But we'll see what happens. But he has thrown 300 yards, more than 300 yards twice now in the last 2 weeks. 313 yards and a touchdown. What killed him this week was he had 2 interceptions. Thus the inconsistency part. Finished with 13 points. But again, now we talked about him last week, and I'm not really sure, maybe it was just his Poppins' judgment was a little cloudy. He had a lot of shit going on.
A lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of what have yous.
But he cut Harrison Butker, and I talked about how great he has been. So what did I do? I, of course, picked him up. Chiefs fan or not, I picked up the Butker. And he just continues to make kicks. After missing his very first kick, this season, first of his career. He has now kicked 18 in a row. This was his second 5 field goal performance in like 5 weeks. It's been absolutely bonkers. He had 2 field goals of less than 40 yards, 2 field goals between 40 and 49 yards, and he had a 51-yarder. Hopefully, maybe or maybe not. Of course, like I'm sounding like a broken record, you're seeing some of these. Also tapped on 2 extra points on top of that. Finished with 21 points. He's a fucking kicker. He's done that twice now, 20-point performances. So, huge game out of him. But on to the winning side of the ball, 12 Monkeys. So despite the horrible conditions in New Jersey, yep, we're talking about the Giants, the New York Giants who play in New Jersey, Matt Ryan was able to come up with his second multi-touchdown game since week 3. Now that's saying something because he hasn't been throwing a lot of touchdowns. They haven't been scoring like they were last season. But he had a decent game, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did fumble twice, so that kind of capped him down. Finished 14.7 points. But monster game on Monday night. This is what absolutely killed me. I was sitting there watching him like, oh, you know, I'm doing pretty good. Butker's getting a lot of field goals. Okay, we're doing all right. And then I remembered this guy was on 12 Monkeys. Travis fucking Kelce, man. Travis Kelce was a beast. He had his best game of the season under the lights of Monday Night Football. 7 receptions, 133 yards, a touchdown for 23.8 points. Travis Kelce, if you didn't see the after-game interview, I'd tell you to go try and find it. It's hilarious. All sorts of energy, always pumped up and ready to go. So way to go, Travis Kelce. But the big winner, of course, was the Eagles defense and special team. Now has 6 interceptions, count them, 6 interceptions in the last 3 weeks. So what did they do this week? 10 points allowed was all. 2 interceptions. One of them was this pick 6 that hopefully you're watching. They had 4 sacks tacked onto that. They ended with 26 points. Real big game out of the Eagles defense and special teams. Now, talking about the Eagles, the trade that I had a couple of weeks ago was Aaron Rodgers and Kareem Hunt for Derek Carr, who I just talked about, and Jay Ajayi. Jay Ajayi was just traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 4th round pick. Jay Ajayi, I am so excited for this. He's going to be a change of pace back, matched up with LeGarrette Blount. I think they're both going to benefit from that. But Blount will probably hawk a lot of the touchdown opportunities once you get close to the end zone. But I'm okay because Jay Ajayi hopefully going to be getting them yards. So pulling into Dallas Center here now. So we'll take a quick cruise through there on our way to Midburn. So catch you a little bit.
It's Dunkin', donuts, Dunkin', donuts, Dunkin', donuts, Dunkin', donuts. Now ain't nothing hotter than a fresh culotta. Got my MD, I'm the muffin doctor. My mind is slow, so I drink a cappuccino. I'm the boss of bagels, the CEO. It's Dunkin', donuts, Dunkin', donuts, Dunkin', donuts, Dunkin', donuts. My stomach is rumbling, so I'm stuffing that muffin. Listen up, you munchkin. America runs on Dunkin'.
Well, all right, everybody. Just been enjoying some great Dunkin' Dunkin' Donuts coffee. And we thank you, Dunkin' Donuts.
Donuts, Dunkin', donuts, Dunkin', donuts, Dunkin'.
All right, and we are back from driving through Dallas Center. So as we continue on our way on up to Midburn, as I'm going to get up to speed here, set the old cruise control. We're going to talk about another recap. Let's go ahead and hit up Jim Kelly's Little Nippers versus the big old TDs. Jim Kelly's Little Nippers getting the win in a close one this week. 105.6 points to big old TD's 103.7. Real close game. It did all come down to Monday night. We're going to get into that a little bit, but let's go ahead and start with big old TDs. We just talked about the trade. Kareem Hunt's record for most 100 all-purpose yard games to start a career came to an end this week. Finished with 7 games. He could not get it done in the 8th game. Granted, he was facing the number 1 rated defense on both passes and rushing in the NFL, which is the Denver Broncos. He ended with 68 all-purpose yards for 8.3 points. So, wild run while it lasted. hopefully now that he got that monkey off his back, he can just keep on rolling. But on to somebody on a highlight here. Kyle Rudolph had his 3rd touchdown of the season. Had a great performance, 6 catches, 27 yards. He got the touchdown, 11.7 points. Josh McCown, meanwhile, has had a great 4-game stretch. Over the last 4 games, he's completed now 70% of his passes while throwing 9 touchdowns. So really good game there for Josh McCown. He finished with 257 yards, a pair of touchdowns for 15 points. Way to go, Josh McCown. Now, we've talked about this game. We're going to keep on talking about it. Deshaun Watson. Holy cow, this rookie can just chuck it, sling it, run it, whatever you need him to do against the number 9 ranked defense. I want you guys to realize Seattle's defense is still a top 10 defense. And this rookie just came in and stomped all over. He had his first ever 400-yard game. First ever 400-yard game, and he's a fucking rookie. He had 402 yards, just made it. 4 touchdowns, a 59-yarder and a 72-yarder. Hopefully I've been playing all of these through this because he just had monster game. He did have his first ever 3-interception game, however. We've talked about how Deshaun Watson needs to overcome and make smarter decisions about those interceptions. This week it did cost him the game. He finished, though, with 33.7 points. So absolute killer game for Deshaun Watson. Let's flip over to the top side of the ball, though. Jim Kelly's Little Nippers getting the win. This week, the Nip Naps got the win from some very unlikely characters. There we go. I like them. You know, it's Matt Bryant. He had his 3rd 14-point game of the season, kicking his way out. He had an extra point, 3 field goals of less than 40 yards, a field goal of 40 to 50. So he had 4 total field goals and an extra point. Give him 14 points. Way to go, Matt Bryant. Carson Wentz. Oh, my God. I can't wait for him and Jay.
Turn left onto 195th Street.
Thank you, Siri. Carson Wentz is now tied with Deshaun Watson, of course, for the most touchdowns this season. They each have 19 scores. So, again, these two guys just lighten it up. 211 yards, 2 touchdowns, did throw a pick, but he ended the day with 15.7 points. So way to go, Carson Wentz. But the big winner, you would never, if you looked at Jim Kelly's entire lineup, you would never once guess that this would happen because it's never happened to him before, never even remotely close. Jack Doyle got at the tight end from Indianapolis with Jacoby Brissett throwing him the ball, had his first 100-yard game of his career. So, yes, this was also a career high in yardage. He finished with 12 receptions. That may also be a career high. I didn't double-check that. 120. I'm trying to have a recap here, Siri. 12 receptions, 121 yards, a touchdown for 25.1 points. So, absolute killer game from Jack Doyle. He's been in the season. God damn it! I'm talking. Jack Doyle's had a great season, so a great career, long career. I'm so glad he finally had that 100-point game. So way to go. Good on you, Jack Doyle, and good on you, Jim Kelly's Little Nippers. We'll see you guys here in a minute for another recap.
The donuts you find in a supermarket are usually made by machine. At Dunkin' Donuts, we make ours by hand. In the store, you have 5 or 6 varieties to choose from. We give you 52. In the supermarket, you don't really know how old the donuts are. We make donuts night and day. Why do we do all this? Because it's easier for you to buy donuts in the supermarket than to make a special stop at Dunkin' Donuts. So we make it worth the trip.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. A beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor and friend?
Well, welcome back, everybody. Just had a pleasant visit at the front offices of Jesus Teats MD. Strongly recommend if you haven't checked out their new location. It is awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you to Mrs. MD for the lovely pizza rolls. Little shout out there. But yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about our next recap here. We're going to talk about Vagenda Omanicide versus Buyer's Remorse. Vagenda Omanicide getting the win at 114 points over Buyer Remorse's 103.8. So let's go ahead and start with Buyer's Remorse. Entering the week, Rob Gronkowski was averaging 15.6 points, 16.6 yards per catch, and 30.8 yards after first contact per game. That was his per game average. Most of his yards coming after first contact, which when you are a beast like Gronkowski, that happens. He had 5 catches on the day, 57 yards, and a touchdown, which is awesome, awesome, awesome for him. Now, the next thing I want to talk about here for Buyer's Remorse is Matt Stafford. Now, I am absolutely amazed at the stats here. So Stafford and the Lions lost 15-20. They lost to the Steelers. Now, I was playing the Steelers D, and normally, if you only allow 15 points, your defense is probably going to be raking in, especially if they had 2 sacks and a fumble recovery. You're expecting that your team probably did a pretty good job, maybe at least 12 points on defense. No, they got 2. The reason they only got 2 points, while only 2 fantasy points, while only allowing 15 points on the floor, was because Matthew Stafford, you've been watching all these replays here, just lit them up. 423 yards. He had an 11-yard rushing attempt, finished with 17.1 points, but 423 yards, and they never scored a touchdown. Like, he did not get a touchdown with it. It was absolutely bonkers there, but just tons of yardage. The exact meaning and definition of a bend but don't break defense there by the Steelers. Speaking of defenses, the other big winner for Buyer's Remorse was the Chiefs' defense and special teams. They tried to make it interesting late on Monday Night Football for Buyer's Remorse, trying to make a stretch there to win. They ended up with only allowing 19 total points. They had 3 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, one of which is going to be here, hopefully, where they return that for a touchdown early in the game. 3 sacks for 24 points. So real good outing by the Kansas City defense, which was awesome to see, especially after last week's loss. All right, on to the winning side of the ball, Vagenda Omanicide. Now, since his Week 6 bye week, Tyrod Taylor has scored 3 touchdowns and averaged 17 points over the last couple of weeks here. This week, 165 yards, a touchdown through the air. He had 6 rushing attempts for 1 yard, but that 1 yard was important. It got him a touchdown. He had 16.1 points. So way to go, Tyrod Taylor. Melvin Gordon and the LA Chargers, I'm going to say it now, they are arguably the best team with a losing record right now in the NFL. And because of Phillip Rivers and this man right here, Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon started the game off with a huge bang. In that first or second, I think it was in one of the first drives, he ripped off a huge 87-yard touchdown run, which was absolutely awesome. It's not only his career longest touchdown, but it's actually the Chargers franchise record for longest touchdown, 87 yards. Other than that, he had 14 attempts, 132 yards total, that touchdown for 23.4 points. So really, really big game from Melvin Gordon. Also, let's take a look at another Seahawk player now. This is the Seahawk from that game. He finished, we're talking about, of course, Russell Wilson. Almost did it again. Russell Wilson. And it's just crazy. He just does whatever he needs to win. The Texans kept pushing, but Russell Wilson also had his first 400-yard passing performance of his career. This was a career high. He had 34 yards in one drive in the end of the fourth quarter there, rushing. He had an 80-yard drive then after that, which he did 80 yards in 3 plays. I mean, they just went bang, bang, bang down the field. He aired it out all over the field all day long. He had completions of 48, 53, 54 yards, and even a 66-yard completion. Hopefully I vamped enough and you can kind of see some of these. Russell Wilson absolutely crushed. If you thought Deshaun Watson did great, Russell Wilson absolutely crushed it. 452 yards, 4 total touchdowns for 35 points. Whew. He just absolutely demolished the Houston Texans defense, which is crazy because they normally have a pretty good defense. But just wow. So way to go, Vagenda Manicide, 114 points. I'm going to keep on driving back now to Des Moines, and maybe I'll finish up these recaps. We'll see where we're at. Have a good one. All right, gang. We're going to be heading on home, and while we're driving here, just got through a Dell, we are going to go ahead and hit up our last recap of the week. We're going to be talking about T.I. Bionic Man and Jesus Teats MD. T.I. Bionic Man getting the win this week, 88 points over Jesus Teats MD, 75.7 points. Let's go ahead and start with Jesus Teats. This game also came down to Monday Night Football as Jesus Teats was looking for a real big game and had a real good chance at a big game for Demaryius Thomas. However, Trevor Siemian just showed that, he's not worth much by way of quarterback because he could not throw the ball anybody anywhere. It was absolutely horrible, the job he did. So Demaryius Thomas only finished with 9.1 points. T.I. Bionic Man got the win. But let's talk about some of the high scores. Again, we're going to mention another kicker here, Steven Gostkowski, coming in the third spot for Jesus Teats MD as their top scorer. He had an extra point, a field goal from 40 to 50 yards, and 3 field goals from less than 40 yards. He did miss 2, so he had the chance of getting up there in almost 20 points, depending on what those field goals were, but he missed 2, total of 12 points. Over the past 3 weeks, Cam Newton has thrown 6 interceptions and just 2 touchdowns. Let that sink in. Over the past 3 weeks, he had 6 interceptions and 2 touchdowns. Most of the time, you want to see that reversed. He finished with 154 yards through the air, a touchdown, another interception, of course, 12.4 points. Now, despite nearly costing the Saints the game with 2 fourth-quarter fumbles, Mark Ingram actually ended up with a decent day, all said and done. He had 6 receptions, 99 all-purpose yards, a touchdown for 14.9 points. But man, those fumbles are kind of what cost him, and we'll look at who picked up the slack there next year when we talk about T.I. Bionic Man. So on his side of the ball, he earned the win, his 3rd win of the season. No thanks to Matt Moore, who actually put up a goose egg while throwing 2 pick-sixes in a game. Absolutely horrible week for Matt Moore, which is why I think, again, Miami probably realized, let's just play for next year and get some good draft points. So that's why they shipped J.H.I. out. The other piece, though, of the Saints' backfield is we were talking about Mark Ingram having the 2 fumbles. His counterpart, Alvin Kamara, split the same number of snaps over the course of the game as Ingram, and he did get a number of yards in that 4th quarter. He finished with 3 receptions, 76 all-purpose yards, and a touchdown, 15.1 points. But it's the very last team and the very last recap of this week, and we've been talking about the game all week. We've been talking about the Seahawks and the Texans matchup. Here is our final player, and I gotta say, this is kind of interesting. We are talking about Will Fuller the 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. Will Fuller the 5th on Sunday put up a huge game. Now, earlier in that day, I was actually listening to some fantasy radio from ESPN, and I heard one of the guys say, you just can't trust Will Fuller's touchdown rate. Let's be real. It's been crazy. But then Will Fuller did this on the first, well, you probably already saw it. He had a touchdown catch and run, a 59-yard touchdown reception for a touchdown. He finished with 5 receptions on the day, 125 yards, 2 touchdowns for 29 points. He has now 7 touchdowns in the 4 games that he's played this season. 7 total touchdowns in just 4 games. Absolutely crazy. Way to go. That was just an awesome matchup. That Seahawks and Houston game. I wish I could have watched it. Wasn't on local, but yeah. Way to go, T.I. Bionic Man. 3rd win of the season. And thank you guys for a great week of recaps. Again, it was awesome to see everybody at the Poppin' Casca wedding. So yeah, until next week.